me to clean my room.
Shalom and welcome to Mishpachah, our new program that deals with the family. That's what Mishpachah means. This is my wife, Debbie. I'm Joe. And we're doing programs on Passover. And last week you showed how to make matzo ball soup. We talked about what is leavened and what's unleavened. What are we going to do today?
Well, today we're going to talk a little bit more about the Passover Seder itself. You know, Passover is looked upon as a sort of a multifunctional festival. There is the one night where you have a Seder meal, the one night when they were taken out of Egypt, for example. And
what is it?
You relive the story of the Exodus, basically, during the Passover Seder. And by the way, I might add that one of the most, I would say, ingredient, so to speak, as far as attitude during the Passover Seder is that you treat it as if you personally were leaving Egypt rather than something that happened to people a long time ago. Now, of course, there's also, during this season, a time when we don't eat any leavened products for 1 week. And that is also part of Passover, although it's not the 1 or the 2-day event. Okay, but tonight we're going to concentrate on, or today I should say, we're going to concentrate on the Passover Seder, that special meal that commemorates, and commemorates a real important word, it commemorates the time when the children of Israel and when we ourselves were brought out of Egypt, out of the bondage and slavery, and, you know, to receive God's commandments.
Okay, Seder is a word that means order. So it's the order of the Passover meal.
That's exactly right.
And there is an order to it. And let me show this Passover Haggadah. This is the book that you use during Passover, and it tells the story of Passover.
It will tell the story. And, you know, while we're on that subject, you have asked in our family, usually at our family Seder, many times or before or after our Seder, that there's somebody very important who is completely left out of the Seder and the retelling of the story. And who would that be?
Okay, first off, the people that you're going to have there at your Seder are going to be your father, your mother, and the children, and any invited guests. And then you have a special place that's set for Elijah, the prophet. And the children ask the questions, the father tells the story.
That's right, but there's somebody important who's left out.
In the Passover Haggadah. Moses is not in the Passover Haggadah, even though it's the story of coming out of the Exodus.
You would think that he should be
Egypt.
the central figure, the central character of the story, and yet he's not even mentioned, is he?
Not even mentioned in the Haggadah.
And why is that?
Because we're to remember that it's God that took the people out.
That's exactly
and
right.
Not to misplace
not so that one man, or even we ourselves, would be lifted up in pride, or so that one man would become a central figure for types of worship or things like this, that to remember that all the glory goes to God.
Right. It's where the Redeemer is really God. The agent of the redemption, of taking them out of Egypt, was Moses. In the same way, Messiah is the agent of redemption, but we recognize that the redemption comes from the Father.
Well, I brought something along with us today, because if anybody wants to have a Passover Seder, one of the things they need is a Seder plate. And these comes in all different sizes and shapes. And I just happened to bring this old relic from home. It's rather noisy.
Yes,
you can see it's really in bad
shape.
This is one we
had. Well,
this is the ministry Passover plate. And it has seen much better days. And as a matter of fact, it's one that's made the rounds for public Seders you have done at various locations. And that's why, by the way, we brought it here, because I didn't want to get our good Seder plate, which is more of a porcelain.
It was also a special
it was a breakable
gift.
material, right? Well, I actually have 2 at home, but anyway, any Seder plate will have several items on them. Usually, they will have the word Pesach written somewhere in the middle. It's not essential.
Pesach.
That's right. But even more important, they will have a place. And sometimes they are indentations, sometimes they are circles, but we will have a place for 6 items. And you know, Joe, one of the things that's really neat about this is that 6 is an easy number to remember. If you just think of 6, think the Star of David has 6 points on it.
6 working days?
Well, what I think of is that man was created on the 6th day. And who needs help with their memory? And remembering and finding little word associations to remember, but man.
That's right.
Okay, and there are several. 6, by the way, is the number for man. So there will be 6 items that go on our Passover plate. And these are all very important items that are used at the head table. Okay, so we're going to start.
Call them off to me and I'll hand them to you.
Well, I tell you what, let's start. Where do we begin? Let's
Zerah?
start with the Zeroah, and let me find on the place. By the way, the Zeroah, that's the Hebrew word for it, but this is a shank bone. The Zeroah is the shank bone. This is an actual lamb bone. It cannot be broken, and folks, the only place I know of to get one of these is a kosher butcher. You have to tell them what you want, then you have to take it home and clean it. It takes numerous roastings and scrapings, roast, scrape, to get it to this shape. By the way, we don't eat this. This has lasted me for several years.
This word, Zeroah, means orm. An interesting point is that where it talks about Messiah, it says, behold, the Zeroah Adonai, the orm of the Lord.
So it's going to go on our Seder plate right here.
And it stands for the lamb.
Okay, the next thing we have is parsley, or the spring vegetable.
Okay, parsley.
That's right. And usually during our Seder, this is going to be dipped. You want to have several, a nice amount, because each person at the Seder table will take a small piece. It has to be the size of an olive. Is that correct?
I always like to put just a big bunch of parsley and
but
other
if you don't
vegetables, because it's cheap.
It is cheap, but you can cut off the stems if you want more the room for the other items. But you'll take the size of an olive and dip it into salt water. So we'll just set that on our plate here. And by the way, one of the things I really enjoy about Passover, by the time you start getting these ingredients together, is that there's a smell or an aroma in the house. And it comes from the parsley and one of our next ingredients. Okay, we've got the lettuce, or we use romaine lettuce, which is a type, by the way, of bitter herb.
So this is what we call maror.
This is, by the way, what we had done last week, talking about how we dip twice. We're going to take this and dip it into a special mixture. So again, we want to have enough so that every person at the table can have a piece. And then we have haroset, which, by the way, we do not have. And there's a reason why we don't have it, because at some point in time, we're going to show how to make haroset. But haroset is this mixture of apples and nuts and honey and some seasonings. It looks just horrible because it looks like the brick mortar. It looks like the horrible bricks that the children of Israel had to make when they were in slavery.
It's also made of the promises of God.
But it tastes very good. It's very, very good.
You make it from the nuts, fruits, honey. All this was part of the promises of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the next thing we have is the beitza, or the roasted egg.
Yes.
And as you can see, it looks a little discolored. What a lot of people will do is boil an egg, and stain it a little bit with coffee or tea, and then you can roast it after it's boiled on an open flame. Charcoal grill or something like that would do fine. And then the next part, I think Joe bought this for himself, right?
Oh, that's all mine.
Okay, this is horseradish. Horseradish is the bitter herb. You know, we actually have two types of bitter herbs. The lettuce, or the romaine lettuce, is considered a type of bitter herb. The horseradish, very obviously, is the other. I think most people would recognize horseradish as being a very bitter product. Now, you can buy it like this, in this huge root-looking form, and then you can grate it, and it can be very, very good.
Which we often do. We grate it at home,
But we usually buy it in the jar where it's already done. Now, when you buy something in a jar like this, not only should you look for the symbol to make sure it's kosher, but you also want to make sure that it is not a horseradish sauce, but is instead a prepared horseradish product. In other words, it should have just horseradish and water and maybe a little bit of salt added to it, but not to be something that has mayonnaise or a lot of other products in it.
Now, the horseradish has another name. We call it Jewish dristan, because it will clear your sinuses up in a flash.
Well, what we're going to do is, let's take these items off again, and we're going to use our Seder plate here as a model, but I'm going to show people what they can do in case they don't have a Seder plate, because you really need a Seder plate if you're going to have a Seder, but not everyone can. It is a centerpiece and should go up the head table, but not everybody can go out and buy a real fancy one right away. As a matter of fact, it should be a very nice Seder plate, but in case you want some time to kind of think over and be choosy about what you want, there are some ways you can get by without one, or some very inexpensive things you can do to get by.
While you're getting your materials, let me point out something on this. As you go to the Passover meal, you'll take your Seder plate and the matzah bread, and at times you have to lift it up, and at times you'll set it down and say, take the beitza and the zeroah off of your Seder plate and set them to the side. So you really need to have some type of plate that you're going to use for that function.
That's right. Now, we happen to have two special people with us today. If you want to introduce them and bring them on.
These are two of our boys. We last week had two of our daughters, and this is a part of the family. This is David, and this is Myron.
Now, David has actually been out here before. He's been on a Hanukkah program we had about a year ago, a little over a year ago. But this is Myron's first visit to the West Texas community, so he's really looking forward to this. So, Joe, let me ask you, because I'm not going to put the boys on the spot, but I mentioned that if you're designing a Seder plate, you need to have room for how many items?
Well, you have to have items for 6 items.
6. And how do you remember the 6?
Well, man was created on the 6th day, is what you said.
Exactly. Now, this is something we used to use for some of our public Seders, and this was like the poor or the cheap man's way of having a Passover Seder. We'd use a Seder plate for a head table, but then we would use something, inexpensive. This is an ordinary vegetable tray, but notice how many compartments it has. If I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can actually use the one in the center. Now, this is okay. This will work. We've used them before, and it's particularly good if, for example, you just can't put the money out into something, or if you have a large group and you want to have a Seder plate at each table. But this is something you can do. Let me show you something kind of neat you could do. What I'm going to do is ask Myron if he can slip around behind me to get some poster board. Okay, Myron, why don't you put the poster board right up here for me? Okay. I've taken an ordinary plant draining bowl pan or whatever, and what we're going to do is use this as our Seder plate. And notice also the reason we've used this is that it has a rim. One of the things about handling a Seder plate, you notice like the indentation, you don't want your items to go rolling around all over the place. You want them to be somewhat stable.
Because you have to pick it up at times.
That's right. So what we're going to do is take a marker, Myron, if you can hand me the markers, and use the pan itself as a sort of a pattern. I tell you what, Joe, if you would look at the drawer and get us a pencil or a pen.
Here's a pen.
There we go. And Myron, what I'm going to ask you to do is let's just kind of use this as a pattern. Like I said, can you hold this down for me so that I can trace around the edges? Okay. We're just going to go around. Now keep in mind also that this is going to be a little bit bigger because we are tracing the outside of this bowl. So you'll want to cut in a little bit smaller. Okay, now you can lift this up. And what we have here is a basic circle that will become our plate. And Myron, if you could hand me the scissors over there, we're going to start cutting away. And I'm going to cut just on the inside of the line. If we can get... if we can... And this might take just a couple of seconds. So, Joe, if you have anything else you want to mention about the Seder plate, or...
Well, you pointed out something that's really unique or important. You showed the tray that you can use, the vegetable tray. And it's functional, but it's not very decorative. And one of the things that you always want to try to do on your Sabbath, your festivals, or any commandment of God is to enhance the commandment. It's called beautify the commandment. So in other words, when you set your Sabbath table, you set your Passover table, you want to set it the very nicest you can. Now, you don't have to spend a whole lot of money in order to do that.
As a matter of fact, you know what I would suggest? Because these things can get expensive, is to put your money in the food, because you're going to have to adjust to a different kind of diet during that week, and take the opportunity during the first time or two you're doing this to put your money in the food and to do something special at home. And the neat thing about this is that this is something you can actually do with your children. Okay, so we have basically just a little bit of a form here, and let's see if it fits in the plate. And miraculously it does. It will fit. So what we're going to do is take the little olive can over here. I was trying to look for something that would be a pattern for a circle that would be about the right size, and I just happened to find this little can of olives. And what we're going to do is draw about 6 circles. Now, Joe, why would I need 6 circles in here?
Why? Because you have 6 items on your Seder plate.
Okay, we're going to overdo that point. But again, we're going to just, like I said, trace 6 items. I'm going to do one up at the top, do it kind of like a 12 o'clock 6 o'clock. And I would suggest you do this in pencil, but we're doing this in pen so that it'll show up, and we're not going to be very, very artistic at this point. And then we want 2 to go in between each one of these on either side. And at home, of course, you can take much more time. You can be much more careful in doing this. We're simply trying to show a little bit of a facsimile of what can be done. And just kind of create kind of the illusion of getting by. Now, let me tell you another place where this might come in handy, though, if people are interested in that. Let's say they have a very nice Seder plate, but they have a Sunday school class, and they're going to do a Passover demonstration. And they're going to have 100 people show up for their Passover Seder. They would like to have a Seder plate for each of their table. You can't go out and purchase 100 or let's say 10 Seder plates. So you can do something like this that will get several Seder plates made. And see, that's really not a bad job that does right there. And it's not very artistic. It's not very even.
But it's easy.
It's something
something you can do with your family.
It's something that people can do at home very, very simply. And then you can get a little bit fancier and start drawing things. And what I'm going to do is we're going to draw the title Pesach. And I'm not going to be very good here with it, but Pesach is going to be done this way.
That's the pay. That's the Hebrew letter pay.
That's right.
Gives you a P sound.
And then the Samek, which is a little bit pointed on the bottom. And
it's going to give you an S sound. So this is P, S.
And then the cut,
which gives you a CH. And this spells the word Pesach,
and like I said,
Passover.
You can get a lot more decorative, a lot better than this, but just for the sake of time, just to show what can be done. People can be much more artistic. And let's say we just want to have like some little grapes drawn down in here on a corner. Show how people can...
Well, people that are really artistic could get
they
into all kinds of things.
They could do so much. Or they could have their children draw something on a pencil, and then we could have little vines, coming up, or leaves. Let's say we're drawing some leaves and little squiggly things. And, you could draw all kinds of things on here just using markers and or crayons, or, you could even paint them somewhat. As long as you have the 6 items, or the 6 places, and then you have something that kind of gives it some definition. Now, the problem with this is that some of these items might get a little bit wet. And if you put this into a bowl, it's not going to last too long. So if we can back up just a little bit. Myron, I have 2 sheets right over here. If you would hand these to me. I have some contact paper, and I'm going to probably need both boys here to help me out. Some people can't go down to a place to laminate, but what you can do is get some ordinary clear contact paper, and let's see if I can get this started, which I don't think I can do. Well...
So you're going to put the contact paper over it to protect it, because the haroset and
there we go.
The
David, can
horseradish
I get you to pull that to hold it straight? And Myron,
excuse me, both very wet.
That's right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the contact paper sticky side up, flat down to the countertop. Rather than trying to cover our little drawing, I'm going to lay it down flat, and I'm going to put the drawing on top.
Okay, and press it down.
Press it down. And then what I would do, and by the way, I cut 2 sheets of this. Let's see if I can get the other off. Oh, this one came off easily.
Okay.
Uh-oh, I say that, but uh-oh. See, that's what happens with contact paper. Myron, can I get you to hold this side right over here? Hold it straight so it won't double up on me. And your people could do so much better at home and spend a little bit more time and effort doing this and make something that is really a special product. That's right. Thank you, David.
But this will give you an idea.
The trash. That's right. And what we're going to do is lay this one on the bottom and just kind of fill it. Just press it. And, of course, I've got edges that didn't meet. But what we will do later on is go back and cut around the edges so that we have just a little bit of a seam. That way we have the seam that comes around on the outside, and it will protect it. It's still a disposable item. It's not going to last for years. It's not a keepsake, but it's something that can get somebody through for, let's say, those large Seder gatherings, or for just something to do at home to involve their kids, their children. Let me show you another interesting thing you can do using the same plant technique. We came across this as we were shopping for the show. This is the same thing. It's a drain pan, but it sits a little bit different on the table, and I don't know if the camera could get in close enough.
Ah, grapes.
Yes, it has grapes on the outside. And one thing, Joe, you had mentioned is that they could be painted or maybe even stained to bring out the colors. You could actually find something like this in a general plant store.
We just ran down to the store.
We're talking your basic Walmart type
Right,
store.
we ran down and went into the plant section and picked these items up, all in 15 minutes.
Well, again, it's nothing that's very, very hard to do, and people out there could do a much better job, but it will give them an idea of how you could do something to make your Passover celebration a little bit more special, or for those larger gatherings when you just can't afford to get a Seder plate for everybody. And that way you can also take a little bit more time in looking around shopping and making your Seder plate an heirloom item. Now, one of the things we do later on in our Seder is we have a song. And we've got our Haggadah out here. And the reason I particularly wanted the boys to be with me today is that they are very, very enthusiastic. Of course, the big boy over here with the white hair is the most enthusiastic of all when it comes to part of the Seder dealing with a song called Dayenu. And Joe, why don't you give us a brief history of the song and what we do?
All right. First off, you have the song Dayenu is in your Haggadah. And in our Haggadah, it's on page 35. In our older ones, I'm not sure that we have a newly published one. I'm not sure of what the page number is there, but we're going to put the song Dayenu up on our website. You can go there, and the Hebrew words will be transliterated. The song means it is enough. And basically, it's going to go down to when the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, they sing this song, it would have been enough if you had left us in Egypt, but you took us out. And then the next chorus goes that it would have been enough if you'd never parted the Red Sea, but you parted the Red Sea. That's the basic idea. It goes on, it would have been enough if you'd never given us the Torah, but you gave us the Torah. It would have been enough if you'd never given us the Sabbath, but you gave us the Sabbath. So we're going to sing, I think, 3 of the verses.
3 of the verses, that's right. And this is a family favorite, but it also occurs in many families all over the world. You can do it at other times of the year, but it is specifically known for doing during the Passover Seder. So we ready? Ryan, you ready?
Before we go, now, during the course, you traditionally beat on the table. But we have what's called the Debbie rule.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, this is usually when my heart just slinks down because Passover, the Seder is usually when you're going to have your finest china dishes and glasses all over the table, and silverware. And, of course, our table is just packed. It's packed. It's got a lot of people, lot of dishes, everything. Dishes, so I secretly wince every time those hands come down. But I tell you what, let's remove that glass bottle over there. We put that off, and I don't think we have anything else that's going to be a problem.
Okay.
But that way the women won't get a heart attack. Okay,
all right.
Here we go.
That's called the Debbie rule.
The Debbie rule. Okay, are we ready? Ilu hotzi hotzi anu mi Mitzrayim, hotzi anu mi Mitzrayim, dayenu, 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 dayenu. Dayenu. Ilu naten lanu et ha-Shabbat, naten lanu et ha-Shabbat, dayenu. Dayenu, 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 dayenu. Ilu naten lanu et ha-Torah, naten lanu et ha-Torah, dayenu. Dayenu, 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 dayenu,
You have to have the hay. It doesn't work without the hay.
One of the things that our friends of the children have noticed whenever they come over to our house for a Sabbath or for Passover is that we are a family that sings together. And I might want to point out that somebody had asked us a while ago if we wanted to give them the recording for the songs we're doing, that they could put that in and have a monitor. I'm thinking, no, these are table songs. These are songs that you do around the table, and they're little family folk songs.
Well, you said a key word there, because you see the festivals of God, whether we're talking Passover, any of the festivals, and the Sabbath, they're set up around your family.
That's right.
And in fact, the Passover itself is geared to your children.
As a matter of fact, it is particularly good for children because it gives them the opportunity of asking why. You know, the last week we talked about why is this night different? Why do we do this whereas we don't do this? Why do we do things differently? And several times during the Seder, the child is going to become very, very important in asking and bringing about the answers. Sometimes it's only when asking why that we can get an answer.
That's right. And your Seder, it takes 4 or 5 hours. And so it's going to be structured so that it will keep the attention of the children. What a fantastic way to teach your family about God's truths, redemption, Messiah, all types of messages, and have a good time, eat a great meal, teach a lot of spiritual truths. You see, one of the great things about the way God structured everything is to build the family so that the father and the mother could play the role that they're supposed to, so that the children could have the training that they're needing to have, and so that it could all be directed towards a full, open life before God, understanding His prophecies, understanding everything, and most of all, building the Mishpachah.